Hi guys, welcome to week 8 of e-learning for forensics. So last week you looked through the textbook and you saw these 7 S's for processing a crime scene. Now that was a neat little pneumatic that somebody who wrote the textbook came up with. I just wanted you to read it. I've got a little shorter, a little more concise PowerPoint to show you those steps. I'm going to take a minute and go through those with you. You can, it's your choice. You can either have the guided notes open and fill them in as I'm going through it, or I've also attached this PowerPoint to my class page so you can go back through it on your own time. So crime scene procedures, what we use in our class. We have 6 steps here. The responding officer performs a walkthrough. You locate, identify, and separate all witnesses. Third thing, you tape off and secure the area. Fourth is you photograph, sketch, mark, label all evidence. Fifth, you need to dust for prints. And 6, you maintain a chain of custody. We will talk about the importance of separating the witnesses. We'll also talk about the importance of dusting for the prints as step number 5. Most people think that's the funnest part of processing a crime scene, but as you'll see in the coming weeks, it can be really messy. So they save that to the end of processing a crime scene. So to start with, the first responding officer performs a walkthrough. So what happens is somebody stumbles upon a crime scene. They call 911. The dispatcher immediately gets a call out to the officers, and when the officers get there, the first responding officer is considered the person in charge until someone of a higher rank shows up. If there is a victim, saving a life comes before preserving any kind of evidence. So the first responding officer quickly makes mental notes and maps out the crime scene without touching anything. They get to that crime. They quickly look around. If they see that there is a victim, they will quickly run to the victim and assess whether or not they can save the life. If they can, they don't worry about disturbing the evidence. Taking a look at this quick little picture here, it looks like they were happening upon somebody on a hillside. There is a lot of people there right now. If we think back to the JonBenét case that you watched a few weeks ago, there's a lot of things wrong with looking or with that many people piled around the victim. So here it says, what if saving a life causes evidence to get destroyed? It doesn't matter. Do you recognize this picture? You watched a video. This is the outside of the house of JonBenét Ramsey. Remember, JonBenét Ramsey, the police did not quickly secure the crime scene. Family and friends got in there and they destroyed the evidence. Our next one, that first responding officer, they get there, they assess, they make the mental notes. If there's no victim, they want to very quickly locate, identify, and separate witnesses. So that first responding officer takes responsibility as the person in charge. They're going to quickly assign duties to the next officers who arrive. So it might be, keep the crowd at bay, separate the witnesses, immediately start to interview them. So why do the police want to separate the witnesses immediately? Well, you guys did a good job last week in the reading, and you saw that if the witnesses start talking to each other, they can very easily influence what each other remembers. Think back to those videos we watched, that psychology professor. There was one girl sitting in the front row, and she insisted that the kid who came in and stole the backpack was wearing certain color pants and his hair was a certain way, and he was wearing a vest versus a jacket. Your witnesses can easily influence each other, so you want to get them separated. Also, if some of those witnesses are in on the crime together, you don't want to give them time to come up with a story that matches. Third thing they have to do, they need to tape off and secure the area. somebody, there's a victim, and all of a sudden there's a very emotional family member who comes rushing in. The officers need to make sure that those people don't come in and trample evidence. So the area is secured so no evidence is removed, moved, changed, or lost. They want to avoid contaminating the area with items that are not evidence. What happens if a crime scene becomes contaminated with outside evidence? Well, all the evidence can be thrown out of court. It would be considered inadmissible. Our fourth thing, we photograph, sketch, and label. If you love photography, then you would love this part of processing a crime scene. You don't just take one picture of the crime. You don't take one picture of the piece of evidence. You take multiple pictures from many different angles. And then you also want to take a picture from farther back so you can see relative to each other where each of the pieces of evidence are sitting. So it says the crime scene must be photographed, multiple angles. This is the best record of the crime scene. It allows the crime scene to be studied after it's been cleaned up. It also allows the crime scene to be recreated in the courtroom. So those photographs and sketches can then be used, and they could lay out the entire crime scene for in a court of law. So sketching and labeling the crime scene allows forensic scientists to accurately place evidence from the crime scene into a recreation in the courtroom. And that sketching the crime scene, you have to be very meticulous with your measurements. What problem could occur if the crime scene is only photographed and not sketched and labeled? Problem could be that you might not know how far apart the victim is from, say, a bloody knife, like in this picture, or how far away the victim is from, say, a gun. Fifth one, like I said before, lots of people think that this is the funnest thing to do. It says, remember, fingerprints are one of the best kinds of individual evidence. We don't just say this fingerprint could be from this person. We can say with 100% certainty, this fingerprint belongs on this person's finger. It ties the suspect to the crime scene. And the last thing that's important is maintaining a chain of custody. So you read a little bit about the different types of bags that you would put evidence in. If you had, say, a bloody shirt, you would want to make sure that the blood on that shirt was properly dried, because if you wrap it up and stick it in a plastic bag, it's going to end up getting moldy, and you could potentially damage the DNA that would be found in that blood. So everything has to be properly collected, bagged, and then there's a chain of custody. This piece of evidence that's in this bag has to be labeled. It has to be recorded what officer collected it, received from, by, date, time. And then when that piece of evidence gets handed off to the next person, it has to again be filled out. You need to be able to go back and see exactly where each piece of evidence has been. If it's believed that a piece of evidence has been tampered with, the chain of custody can be used to prove that it has or has not been tampered with. What happens if the chain of custody is broken or not properly followed? Our evidence becomes inadmissible. And just like in the JonBenét Ramsey case, the case ends up going unsolved, even if people are pretty sure that they know who the murderer was. If the chain of custody has been broken, the evidence is no longer any good. All right, so that's about it. This week, you're going through that PowerPoint, doing the guided notes. You're going to read a case study. There's an extra little video in there where there's actually some officers talking about going through these different crime scene procedures. That's about it. Next week, we're going to dive into fingerprints. All right, see ya.